Hello, everyone. This is Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspire show. And my guest today is Celeste Yacoboni. Celeste is passionate about helping people discover a deeper experience of the sacred in their daily lives. Ordained as a minister of walking prayer by the Center for Sacred Studies in California, she facilitates healing and transformation through her unique approach to spiritual coaching and her mastery of a number of healing hearts. Her work focuses on guiding and supporting people through transitions by creating a space of awareness, presence, and inspiration, which integrates body, mind, spirit, and emotions. Celeste maintains a thriving private practice in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in which she facilitates healing and wholeness through spiritual embodiment, Nei Tsang, Qigong, women's breath health, plant essences, the Hawaiian practice of Ho'oponopono, and the inquiry, How Do You Pray? Her book, How Do You Pray, is an interspiritual prayer book and resource guide to an emerging global spirituality, which embraces our religious and spiritual diversity. Celeste, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And before we started, I admired the beautiful cabinet behind you, amazing wood and carvings. And you said it is from India.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's start by explaining what is walking prayer, Serpent Clan.
Walking prayer is a way of being that is informed by spirit and by the rhythms of nature rather than a dogma. And the Center for Sacred Studies offers a ministerial program that centers around that. Really embracing the sacred in all of life. So it isn't just about praying very reverently in a place of worship, but about praying everywhere, being in prayer.
Yes. So you mentioned dogma. So did it happen to you to be born in a specific religion just to realize later on in life that you don't resonate with those teachings and you had to find a new spiritual path?
Yes, I was brought up Catholic, and I went to a Catholic elementary school. We went to church. My parents weren't very religious. My mom wanted to give us a good foundation, so we did go to church on Sunday. But I had some experiences in that church that led me to believe there was something else, something that I wanted to explore that was more encompassing, more inclusive of everyone and everything, like other religions. My mother always said you could pray in that church, but you don't need that church to pray. So I felt that she gave me permission early on to explore. And that's what I did. I actually had an experience I'll share. I guess I was in 8th grade, and my friends and I were cutting church. We wouldn't go to church. We would go up to the park and have fun. So I went to confession one day, and I said, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been a month since my last confession, and I missed Mass on Sunday 4 times." He went ballistic. He started screaming, "You rat, you communist." Wow. And because I never went, the whole month, I missed Mass every Sunday. He was a visiting priest. I guess he wasn't used to me and my friends. And he just went crazy. And I went out there and I thought, this isn't for me. That isn't forgiveness. That isn't compassion. That isn't any kind of understanding. So I left the church that day, never to return. And I started my own quest for meaning and what was sacred to me. And I started a great exploration that goes on to this day.
Interesting. And how that exploration evolved, what exactly you're looking for?
Well, I was looking for something that, like we spoke of the Center for Sacred Studies, moved me and informed me in a way that was so meaningful, I could not doubt it. I always doubted all this dogma and even the idea of God. At that time, it was more like this white bearded man in the sky that looked down and was pretty strict, and it was so separate from myself.
Yes.
It seemed I was always doing things to get him mad. And I was looking for something that that welcomed me and that I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel like it was me and God, but it was something that connected me to something larger.
Yes, and the more I listen to my guests, the more I learn that they all have this idea and perception in common, that we shouldn't be separated from God, shouldn't be separated from the enlightened beings like Buddha, Jesus, or Yeshua, as some people call him, but be part of them or consider them part of us. And that's why they were looking for more spiritual meaning in their lives, because again, the church didn't explain the Bible and the sacred text in a way that they resonated with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it did separate us from nature, from the earth that we are a part of, and from each other. I always found it strange that growing up in my religion, we looked at other people as less than us. I mean, they weren't going to go to heaven if they were of a different faith. And that was like, well, it's a really nice person. That's an awful strict outcome to this life. And when we look at the indigenous people, how they lived as part of the earth and part of each other, and feeling the sacredness of all of life, that is something that is so inspiring. Yes. And so life supporting.
Yeah, they understand the cycle of nature. They understand everything related to Mother Earth because they live so close to it. They live off the land with so much reverence, which we lost. So, going or touching on your book, I saw some testimonials by Sandra Ingerman, Hank Wesselman, and I know them. I mean, I know Hank well, and I took one of his courses. So they come from a shamanic perspective of life. So how do they, in your opinion, what's the connection between prayer, which is mainly associated with religion, and the shamanic practice, which is associated with mysticism and indigenous people, as you said, and spirit realm?
Well, they both actually shared a lot about the earth and their connection to the forces of nature. And these are very strong influencers in our life. And so they spoke a lot about nature. And there are 129 different people in the book So that's 129 different ways of praying. And not that many of them really spoke about religion necessarily. Of course, some of them did, but it was a much wider lens that we explored prayer through. And I thought that was so refreshing and so inspiring.
So, what other commonalities did you encounter from all the participants, other than the one you just mentioned?
Well, there are a lot of different common threads, like gratitude, love, compassion, oneness, certainly oneness with nature and also with each other. If the viewers aren't familiar with the book, I'd like to share a little bit about.
Please. In fact, I wanted to ask you, what was the birthing idea of how do you pray?
Yeah, I actually woke up early one morning. It was still dark outside, and I heard those words, "How do you pray?" And I heard that loud and clear. And this voice continued, "Is it an hour a week at a designated place of worship? Or do you take your prayers out to the streets? Do you pray like your parents' culture or tribe? Or did you develop another way? Do you pray to God? Or do you have another special name?
Yeah.
Is it a monologue or a conversation?" Well, it went on. And by this time I grabbed a pen and I was taking notes. And at one point, I laid back in my bed and I saw all, like a kaleidoscope, all of these forms of prayer. There were forms more religious, like monks with beads and rosaries, and people in these incredible mosques, temples, churches. But also there were people on the earth, barefoot. I saw those feet dancing on the earth and heard chants, beautiful songs, things that I wasn't even really familiar with. It was very visceral and alive, and it went on and on. By the end of it was morning by that time, I was exhausted. I mean, this was such a huge download. I was really speechless for some time. And I knew it would be a book. I knew this was an inquiry, an exploration, something that I was meant to share. So of course I shared it with my husband first. It took me a couple of days to integrate it. And then I started to share with my clients and everyone I saw. I asked them, "How do you pray? How do you pray?" And I got lots of responses. And my husband and I started opening our home to different prayer shares. People would come and do, different things that they wanted to share, different ways of prayer. We put up a Native American sweat lodge and different ceremonies and dances and drumming and, so many amazing things. And it took years. I continue to ask that question, but at some point the book was birthed.
So in other words, you had a practice in Santa Fe while the idea for the book came to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you record all these ceremonies which you assembled later on while writing the book, or it was just a private, or private sessions?
Well, the ceremonies at my home were rarely recorded. If someone wanted to record something with their phone, they did, but we didn't record them. And most of the actual 129 people that shared for the book, it was through email. I did 12 interviews that were amazing. When I emailed this invitation for people to join me, I asked them if they would prefer to do a phone interview. We could. And the first one was Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi. He said, well, I'd like a phone interview. I'm like, wow, this is great. So we spoke for an hour or so. And well, he did most of the talking, and he shared, the beautiful ways that he prayed. And I did, like I said, 12 of those, which they were amazing.
Why is prayer important?
Well, it's important because it brings awareness. All throughout our day, there are many sacred moments that are so meaningful. And sometimes they go unnoticed. I mean, eating food for one, breathing for one, so many things. But prayer brings awareness to that. So it's like, oh yeah, this is amazing. I'm breathing.
Yeah.
This is the greatest prayer. Being inspired, bringing spirit into the body. So prayer is awareness. I also call it communion with what we consider sacred.
Yes. In the introduction, I mentioned that you are practicing healing arts. What are these healing arts, please?
Well, I've been a massage therapist for many years. So I know many different types of modalities, working with people, working on their bodies and energy fields. And touching someone's body is touching their soul.
Yeah.
So we're going through these different layers. And a modality that is very special to me is Nei Tsang. It's a Taoist abdominal massage. So it's working the energy of the internal organs. Just like we digest food, we digest all of life's experiences. And if things are unprocessed, they are held in the body, often in the abdomen. And then these charges, this emotional holding, creates patterns of tension. So by working on the abdomen, on the organs, with the breath first, and touch, I facilitate release.
Okay, so you work on unblocking certain energy centers or points in the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you also are Ho'oponopono practitioner. How do you integrate that in your daily practice?
Well, I guess it started where I had used this Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. And I thank you. This mantra for a couple of years. And one day I was driving home and it came out in song. I started singing it. And wow, where did that come from? So I called a friend of mine and sang it on her voicemail, just in case I were to forget it. Of course, I never did. And I started singing it for people and different groups and my clients. And then I was asked more and more to sing it to open a ceremony or to sing it when someone was passing, or different times, different meaningful times. So I did. And then I thought, well, I'll record it. So I recorded it, and that's how it started. But I would sing it myself, as I still do. I sang it this morning. I sing it often. I think singing is a wonderful expression and way to open up and get more breath in there, and to let it out through the voice. And it feels like the language of the heart. It just feels so beautiful to sing. So it's a wonderful delivery, right? That's how I do it. I share it. I sing it. I wail it sometimes really loud in my car when I'm driving. And it too is a way to release and clear.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, sometimes I do sing in the car and I have the boys with me, but I just cannot make them sing. I cannot make them move with the music. Is something in them that won't let them release that emotion, is maybe they have the perception that as a man, even if there are no constraints in the house, I always told them you have to express yourself because this is how you're going to evolve and mature, and you're going to be balanced. But somehow they don't want to release that, not necessarily pressure, but that emotion, and show that emotion. I don't know why, but it's funny.
I have an idea.
Okay.
There's in Qigong, sometimes we do this fun thing called laughing Qigong, where we'll start laughing, and that could be very hard. I mean, you could, do it with the boys and see if they even, can get laughing going kind of for no reason, although there's so many reasons really. But you start, okay, I'm going to laugh, and then you get into it. You kind of force it at first. Then suddenly, like, you're laughing, and then you're laughing at yourself, or if you're with someone else, they look so silly, you're laughing at each other. And then we would start doing like monkey moves and, all these crazy things. And then we would really crack up and start laughing. And that might be a fun little thing to do, make animal gestures and crazy sounds and roar.
They are not young, I mean, not that young anymore, like 16 and 22, but I'll still try it on them and see how they react. How the readers did react to your book?
Very well. I got so many invitations to do readings and interviews and to share, and a lot of feedback. And I still do. Yesterday, someone gave me some beautiful feedback about my mother's prayer that she wrote for the book. And often, actually, she's one of the favorites. But people really found it helpful and inspiring, because there's something for everyone. But it's such an intimate and soul level, because it isn't in a context of religion or it has no limits. So people have been really inspired, and they continue to share it and read it at their churches or organizations. So very, very good.
So are you saying that the church organizations or those around, forming an association around the church, read or read this book in their congregations? Are they open to read it? That's great.
They may have not been real traditional services, but there are, different services that are open to that. And yeah, I heard that quite often, that people have, and maybe they pick the choice ones that, would be well received.
Yeah, interesting, because another guest of mine, Mary Reed, she also wrote a book. She never read the Bible, but she was again pushed by divinity. The divinity, the creator, God, gave her this task: write this book and start talking to people, spread the message. She became a nun. She organized these events, and again, people in various religious congregations welcome her to talk about her book, her ideas, and the way she interprets some of the teachings which were given to her.
Mm, hmm. Yeah, I feel this whole idea of God, and that often comes up when we're talking about prayer, because are we praying to someone? And we can. I mean, that's one way to do it. But the idea of God is so awesome and so huge that it doesn't quite fit into one little container. It just is oozing out everywhere. And now we have this amazing time that we live in where we choose our pronouns, what we identify with. Well, I think we certainly can do that for God as well. So where we called he, we could say she. I mean, we could really feel into our God, and we don't have to attach any one way. It can change. Some days I'm praying to the Great Mother, and some days I'm praying to a tree. Some days I'm praying to the earth, and some days I'm praying to Kuan Yin, or form, or formless. But one thing I have noticed is that this other, I mean, to pray to an other, we personify God. So we give some kind of an image. Well, I'm looking at around me at you and you and you and you. And as we pray together, we're creating something between us that is this spark, or this spirit. Something grows out of our communion, our communication together, where suddenly we're more than two separate selves, two separate things. We're together in this prayer, in this conversation. And
Yes.
yeah, it creates something so sacred.
And if we believe that we have the spark of God, of the Creator inside us, and I am the one who painted the painting behind you on your right, then means that's God in there. There is God in the cabinet, created or made behind you, because again, it's me which have the spark of God who created it. So we can take this idea to a different length.
Mhm. It's very exciting.
You
Yeah,
you offer a workshop on prayer. Um, do we need a workshop to learn how to pray?
absolutely not. And the workshop is a prayer shop. There's no work involved, and I am not teaching anything.
Oh,
So that's one thing, this whole question of how do you pray? Well, that's my question. I'm asking, how do you pray? I'm asking myself, how do I pray? It's not like I'm an expert on it at all. So the coming together in a prayer shop, we're actually sharing, like we are now. We're sharing all of these ideas and experimenting and having experiences with different ways of praying to see what resonates, and what we really feel strongly about. So it's experiential, but it certainly isn't a teaching.
no, that's great. Santa Fe, like Sedona, is a special place. So how do you resonate with the landscape? And did you move there a long time ago before you open your practice, or after?
Yes, I did move here almost 30 years ago. So I've been here quite a while and living on the land on 25 acres
Wow.
of land and trees. And like I said, we have a sweat lodge here and, many beautiful sacred spaces on the land. So it's a sacred place. It's an amazing place to be right here. And as I move into the community, there are some amazing people. And like you say, people often come here, they are drawn to this place because, well, it's the land of enchantment, for one thing, but also we're maybe looking for another way. There's indigenous people that live here, there's many different types of people that live here. And um, it's a wonderful thing to experience, to live in community with with variations, with different ways to live, different ways to worship, different terrains, where um, in the mountains, or the high desert. So it's a very special place. And I was here and I opened my practice here. I lived here for a while before I actually started. I mean, I always did this type of work, well, for a long time. But I finally did, start my practice and work with people, which is wonderful.
So do you feel that you are living in a bubble of energy or surrounded by a field of energy field which protects you from what happens around the world and in US right now?
I feel that I always feel very blessed to live in nature, to be able to walk outside and walk in the trees. Um, Trees are very important to me. They give me oxygen to breathe, all of us. I mean, this is, I pray with these, I commune with nature and trees. And so I feel very blessed to live in nature. And I do have a little more space around me than living in the city. But there is really no escape, because we are all one people, even as we're going through this period of division and upheaval, as we start or continue to shift and let go of old structures that are breaking down as we birth a new way, new values, new systems. So I have a little more space around me to walk outside and get some fresh air. But I feel that we are all in this together.
And what's your perception? You just mentioned that some structures might come down and there is some struggle and division. So based on the messages you receive, based on your sensitivities, do you see us coming with flying colors on the other side? Do we have to go through a period of struggling and assessment and settling before we understand the new rules of the world surrounding us?
I feel we are going through this birth canal, and it is labor, certainly not always comfortable. And we are not necessarily learning, but creating. So we're in this together, although it doesn't always seem on some levels that our voices are heard as much as we may want them to be or like them to be. But I feel that we are all going through this together as we create something, and it starts with ourselves, within ourselves. So we all have this shadow side, or doubts and fears and things that we might want to shift and fine tune and illuminate. So maybe our voices aren't heard in some of the more widespread platforms, but we are all starting and healing from within. So we are all bringing that, and again, it's kind of a different lens that we're looking through. You think like, oh, that's going to take forever. You know, how are we each going to do our little work and it's going to amount to something? And I don't know. I don't know the answers to that, but I know that it does take all of us. It's not like something's going to just be fixed out there and then we're going to learn the new way.
Yeah.
But we're all doing this together.
Yes.
Somehow.
We all have to pull into the same direction and work on ourselves and help those around us to understand themselves and see the light.
Yeah, and I think that's very important right now, and certainly very prayerful, to reach out, and maybe praying is talking to you. You know, maybe it isn't going to church alone. I mean, sure, that's fine, but maybe it's talking to somebody who really needs to be heard right now. Maybe it's being kind. I mean, this whole opportunity of kindness, you know, where we could actually be kind to each other and listen to each other, especially when there's some things we don't necessarily understand or like even, or differences that people have. That's what I'm finding is so difficult right now. People with different ideas and opinions, and coming together and having the patience, for one thing, you know, because emotions are flaring. So it's a challenge to actually listen to someone and get into a place of non-judgment. And, you know, I really want to hear you. I really want to hear what you have to say, and, you know, how you could possibly believe that. So unlike what I believe. But, you know, that's how we start to bridge these extremes.
Yes, and it's good to have the patience, as you said, to listen to someone else with a different opinion, and also at the same time to erase the label of religion. If it's coming from a different religion, that should be put aside. If that person, I mean, all the time, but especially in these trying moments when we need this type of support from each other. So these labels of racism and, you know, religion and anything else should vanish, should be erased from our collective consciousness, and just pull together and offer support, as you said.
Mm-hmm. And also we have patience for them as well. You know, not to even judge our idea of judging and separating. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I get it. I mean, you know, look how we've gotten to this point. Look at all that stuff that's gone down and the way it has been. Well, it's not going to change like that. So yeah, have some patience and compassion for those things in myself, even that I've outgrown, and that I want to change. Like, yeah, I don't really want to be like that, but sometimes these feelings are going to come up, and even hold those feelings in love as we, or especially while we transform them.
Yes. I want to ask you, Celeste, if in the past, did you take any spiritual pilgrimages in other countries?
Yes, when I left high school, I had a cousin who was part of a new experimental college in Denmark. So I went to that place, which was amazing. There were people from all over the world that came there, way different cultures and religions. So I got to be in this very creative place that stressed being who you are, being what you wanted to be, and living with people like that, really learning like, wow, that person is so different, and I had no idea, and I was even a little afraid maybe, and so that was such an experience, and that's where I really learned a lot about Eastern philosophies and meditation and yoga. And then I traveled around Europe for a year and visited different houses of worship, different communities. And that was also just amazing. Different cultures, different foods. And then later in life, I was able to visit Egypt, which I felt very connected to since I was a child, and Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. I was in South America and Mexico. So yeah, and Hawaii and around the United States. So I have been able to explore and appreciate different ways of living and praying.
How was your experience in Hawaii? Because I know Hank Wesselman lives there, and in his book, he describes his experience with local kahuna who since then passed. But his experience on the islands were just unbelievable. How did you describe yours?
Unbelievable as well. I lived 1 year on Maui, and I am so touched by nature, and the nature is huge because we have the water like nowhere else. So I mean, it's an island, so of course the water was so powerful and so beautiful in its consistency, it's constant, and then it's unexpected fierceness and surprise and awesomeness, and also the volcano. I mean, there were just such huge huge life forms, huge rhythms that I had never experienced before. And the lighting there is so different. Even flying in and looking out of the plane, it's so bright and so blue, and it has a different quality that then perks something in the being, in the brain. And so all of these things made life perception so different that it was always a little different. Of course, then living with the Hawaiian people, in an island people who had a different way of doing things and a different timing. And I had lived, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So that was a city, even though we had 6 acres that my grandfather and grandmother, who came over from Italy, cultivated and built homes. And so it was our family place and very close to nature. but Pittsburgh is a big city, so I experienced that. And so living on an island, it's just a way different way to be with life, you know, a different timing, a different way to look at things. And that was very powerful.
Did you have any close encounters with goddess Pele?
Always, always part of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I felt always this powerful being that was, you know, so connected with everything that I mentioned.
Yeah. In fact, another guest of mine, Jonathan Hammond, just moved to Hawaii. He's a shaman and healer, and he said, I just cannot stay away. The call is so powerful that I have to move. So he moved in January, or about to move. But I interviewed him like 3 weeks ago, and he was packing and ready to go, even if he had a thriving business in New York. So I said, I have to leave everything behind. I don't care. The call is so powerful. I have to go.
Oh, that's funny. I just got in touch with a friend of mine who lives in Marin, and the same thing happened. I said, hi, Happy New Year. How's it going? And she emailed back, I can't talk now. We're packing the house. We're moving to Maui. I'm like, oh, wow.
Interesting. What are the things you can tell us about your practice? What other services and um, way of enriching people's life you are offering?
Well, I'm working quite a bit now with women, and we're exploring our voices, really looking at how the voice of the feminine has been both silenced and honored. And it's a very potent piece right now. Not just women, I might say, but mostly women, because that's who's coming forward to share this and experiences that we all have in common, that you don't always know when you go through your own ways of being and your own beliefs and things that you would consider limitations and maybe doubts or fears. And then you open up and start sharing, and you find out, wow, I'm not alone at all. So many people, and like I said, right now, it's a lot about women, are experiencing these same things. So I do have a program called The Voice of the Feminine that I'm offering now as well, where we do a lot of sharing and then a lot of work with feminine wisdom guides that have inspired me, working with them to really inspire.
Yeah, this theme of the feminine side of ourself being or moving forward came over and over again in my latest interviews. And in fact, I put together a workshop like a year ago, Refocus a Pathless Life to Deepen Spirituality. And I decided to narrow it down to men because it's us who are afraid to express our feminine side, the emotional side, and suppress it. And that brings more pain within the family, within our professional life, even personal life in terms of life purpose. So I will try to focus this year more on men and help them realize who they really are.
That's beautiful. Yeah, wow, it's really great. And the voice of the feminine, of course, speaks through all genders. You know,
Yes.
there's no limitation there. I was thinking about it when we were talking about the islands, that whole quality of water is very watery, very fluid, very receptive, and very feminine. And yeah, that's really strong. But oh, I love that you're working with men that way.
And to be honest with you, I was always puzzled how an island can generate fresh water to sustain life for those living on it in the middle of an ocean. So we have salt water, but then you have an island which has the source of life, drinking water. That amazed me, since I was able to realize and acknowledge water as a primordial element of creation. And I write about water, and I make water a living character in my books, because that attracted me. That made me, question its existence, or her existence, if I want to make it like a character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in How Do You Pray, Nikki Scully, who is also a shamanic practitioner, shares about how to create a water altar, where she actually gets water from different locations and brings them to her altar. And yeah, it's really great.
Celeste, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Any final thoughts for the interview?
Well, I'm very, very grateful. It's such a wonderful experience and truly a prayer. So
Thank you.
inspiring to be here with you.
Thank you. And for my viewers, thank you for watching the interview. Share it, like it is very important. You can always support me on patreon.com/Claudiu Murgan. And until next time, love and gratitude.